Beautiful. Alrighty. So we're gonna start with some welcomes and intros, but before that, I want to start with like why we're here and the purpose of this event. So this event is kind of based around understanding the history of South Florida and the LGBTQ community and kind of how that's evolved over time. And also kind of bring it back to now and understand what's happening now with the South Florida community and how that's impacting the LGBTQ community. And finally, we're gonna, after we've done the whole basis and the foundation, talk about kind of what we can do as community members, students, faculty, staff, to help create change in South Florida. So should be super exciting. There will be a Q&A section at the end. So if you do have questions, hold on to them. We will have time, no worries. All right, so I'll start with my intro. I'm Ryan, I use he, they pronouns. I am a student assistant at the LGBTQ Student Center. I'm a senior majoring in sociology and gender studies and super excited to be here. I'm gonna popcorn the introductions to Dr. Vega.
Thanks, Ryan. Dr. Isela Vega, Dr. V, I welcome all pronouns, director for our LGBTQ Center here at the university. Super excited to have this session today. I know everybody's in for a treat. And before we start, I just want to thank Ryan, who has taken the lead with this as their summer program, a much needed topic, and really happy to have Damian here. I'm going to popcorn it over to Mariana.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana Gonzalez. My pronouns are she, her, ella, and I'm the assistant director here at the LGBTQ Center. I do quite a bit of the programming that you might see or attend this upcoming year, and I advise a couple of our student orgs as well. And I'll popcorn it to Taylor.
Hello, I'm Taylor Jagelinzer. I'm one of the student assistants at the center, and I co-lead one of our student organizations, Transcendence. I'm here to learn how to be more civically engaged in my community. And for introductions, am I allowed to ask Damian to do his?
So real quickly, I'm gonna read Damian's beautiful bio, and then Damian, I will let you kind of introduce yourself, but I have to give the special guest his own special intro. So we have Damian Pardo here with us today. As an activist, Damian has been advocating for equality, diversity, and inclusion in South Florida and beyond, with over 35 years of volunteering and efforts to unite communities, including founding SAVE, which stands for Safeguarding American Values for Everyone, in 1993, while serving as a two-term president of the largest AIDS health organization, Care Resource, formerly known as Health Crisis Network. In 2015, he co-founded Forward Miami and the Gay Ocho Festival, dedicated to uniting South Florida's diverse communities. He has served on the Miami-Dade Equal Opportunity Board for 12 years, the Board of Trustees of the Miami Foundation, the Celia Cruz Foundation, and various national and local nonprofit boards. Most recently, Damian serves on the board of Vizcaya Museum and Gardens. All right, so Damian, I'm gonna pass it over to you to do a quick intro and also let us know, kind of get us started off with the history of South Florida and the LGBTQ community and how you've been involved in that.
So thank you, Ryan. My pronouns are he, him, his. And professionally, just so you know, I'm a financial planner and I have been in finance for the very beginning, ever since I left college, banking, financial advisory and investments. I've worked at Merrill Lynch 10 years, Morgan Stanley 10 years, and I have my own team with First Horizon. Getting to the really interesting part, which is the history, it's important to note that kind of when I started coming out, which was, I came out at a very young age, at 8 years old, to myself, and then at 13 to my parents. And that was the time when Anita Bryant was happening in Miami. Why is this important? Because Miami has a very prominent place in LGBTQ history. Unfortunately, most of the history and the way it's recorded and generated is out of, New York, San Francisco, but a lot of people fail to... What's that? Are we good? Ryan, are we okay?
Yeah, we're all good. Sorry, I think
Okay.
we just had some mics left on. Sorry, go ahead.
No problem. But the importance of Miami in that role is that this is the first place where all of a sudden becomes a national issue. And the first place where the religious right really organizes radically at the national level. And what happened was that Miami, at that time, kind of a sleepy, southern city that was growing quickly, passed a human rights ordinance. What is a human rights ordinance? A human rights ordinance takes all the protected categories that are protected against discrimination in credit, housing, public accommodations, etc., and it embodies those protections in law. What Miami did was it added the words sexual orientation. Back then, gender identity really didn't exist as a separate form of protection. So Miami passes this, and then the whole world freaks out because a singer that had been Miss Universe named Anita Bryant, and she was the Florida Sunshine orange juice lady, and she would sell, she was on all the ads for the orange juice. Took this cause on, and this is fascinating because once again the issue here was the children. So they created this campaign called Save the Children, and the entire campaign kind of casts homosexual men as pedophiles. It also, interestingly, the people who always got bombarded were the men. The men were always the threat. The men were always the issue. Gay men in general, and of course lesbians, bi, anyone that identified as LGBTQ, back then really LGBT, was kind of just decimated in Florida. People lost jobs. They were beat up. It was a really ugly, ugly chapter in Miami history. Time goes on. They win. We lost 3-1 on the vote. There's an important lesson there, I think, for us, and in current times especially. When you haven't done the education and you haven't done the alliance building, coalition building, kind of all the hard work, you really can't legislate the way people feel. And if your polling reflects that the general population really doesn't support, understand, or accept something, I think as a community, we have to be extremely careful, because if we go back to the 70s, the gay community, and I'm just going to say gay because that was the primary identifier at that time, community was put on a little hook like shrimp and thrown out there, actually. And it was eaten up alive. And it was such a difficult period that a couple of interesting facts. Harvey Milk actually flew to Miami to try to understand what was going on, because they wanted to prepare in San Francisco for what was starting in Miami. And they could tell that this was like a really big wave that was going to affect everyone nationally. The other thing is that at the time, nobody really knew that this was going to be this enormous groundswell that eventually would keep Miami under wraps for 20 years. So when SAVE starts in 93, starts deciding that it's going to tackle this issue, which rightfully so at that point, we felt like, of course, there protection from discrimination. Why wouldn't we be included in such a basic thing, And we start raising this issue. Fascinatingly, the LGBTQ community was not in support of it. People were not in support of it. People were generally freaked out about it. Right. Important also in that mix is that AIDS hits right after that. So you have this enormous religious movement talking about how, LGBT people are not natural, and they're kind of almost implying like an evilness to the whole thing, and they're pedophiles and they attack children. And then right after that, we have the AIDS crisis. So all of these kind of fundamentalist theories revolved around, well, see, you get what's coming to you. You deserve what's coming to you, this horrible crisis. Important to understand that Miami did not follow the same patterns as San Francisco and New York. It wasn't primarily gay men having HIV/AIDS in Miami. Miami was a drug abuse, an IV drug use spread. So it was a lot of marginalized communities that were predominantly heterosexual. And then what we started seeing was people from San Francisco and New York come home to Miami, kind of like to die. So everything really started changing. HIV/AIDS is, I would say, the most important thing that ever happened in the LGBTQ community. I think it's often not understood. The value of that is that it forced people to come out. So what does that mean? Once you had HIV, everybody knew you were gay. So all kinds of conversations and all kinds of families all of a sudden had to deal with the fact that they had a gay person in the family, and they lost brothers and fathers and children. And so, and you know what? When you deal with life and death issues, everything else is stupid. Everything else is stupid. What prevails is love. And that became very clear as AIDS and HIV took people away from us. Everybody kept thinking, wow, that's horrible. I didn't even care if he was gay. I just didn't want to lose him, you know? And that started creating a lot of momentum around just letting LGBTQ people live, like live and let live. You know, we're all in this together. Nobody wants to see anyone die. So that in the mix, Anita Bryant's still back there. Our own community was very unwilling to accept the idea that we deserve to be protected. And it was because of, I would say, I have often described it as a layer of like 1 foot of ice called Anita Bryant on top of everybody's head, because people were so afraid. Even if you made sense to people and said, we deserve it, we're doing the ground building, we're doing the education, we're doing all the work that's necessary to prepare for a legal battle, they would be like, oh my God, no, we need $1 million in the bank and we need a 5-year plan. And you know what? We didn't need any of that. What we needed to do was build a really good community coalition. If you notice, the name of the organization is Safeguarding American Values for Everyone. It's not Equality Miami. It's not you know, and not that there's anything wrong had it been Equality Miami, but what it's saying is that the perspective was, we need to be with everyone. We need to make this about everyone, because if they understand us, if they understand our story and we understand their story, now we're a team. Now we can function and work together. And that's our strength. I think you know that the A for a long time only stood for ally. And a big reason that we were able to do everything we were able to do is that we relied on allies. We welcomed allies, we built allies, we learned from allies, we let them open doors for us. Lots of people in very privileged positions opened our doors. And lots of people made big sacrifices on our behalf. And I think it's really important to always understand that, because we need everyone in this fight. We can't, so often we turn people away because they used the wrong word or they said something we didn't like, and that doesn't help us. For the longest time, we were about accepting everything and everyone. And if somebody said something the wrong way, it's cool. You know, we know they didn't mean it that way. We're going to help them get to where they need to get, you know, over time. And I think there's a big valuable lesson in that, because it's about building those alliances and understanding the other community stories. In a place like Miami, we have to understand the Black American story in Miami, but we also have to understand the Black Bahamian story in Miami, and the Black Haitian story, and the Black Jamaican story, and they're different, and the Black Cuban story, which is wildly different than the others. So the diversity that we have in Miami is beautiful, but it's also a challenge because it requires a tremendous amount of hard work. We have to be committed to, number one, being patient, meaning, you know, I often tell people, just put the pause button, just hit the pause button. You know, don't be so quick to jump on the person or the word just kick back a little bit, let it go, you know, and start building a relationship. I'll give you a quick example. When we started Gay Ocho, which everybody thought was insane, that's another thing. Everything I've ever done, people think is insane. But my co-founder, Joe Cardona, and I were walking down Calle Ocho, and this gentleman comes outside and he goes, hey, I'll say it in English because you won't understand if I say it in Spanish, but he goes, hey, are you guys the gays? And Joe, by the way, is not gay at all. He's like a baseball player, Cuban American documentarian. I'm the godfather to his daughter. I mean, he just believes in diversity and inclusion, and we both believed in the project. So comes out, are you guys the gays doing da da da? And we're like, yeah, like Joe didn't go, no, I'm not gay. We just smiled and said, yeah, we're doing the festival. And they said, oh, come here, let me tell you my story. And we're like, okay, we walk over there, and he says, every Friday, this restaurant, I would have a gay, and the gay would come here and sit in that table. And we're like, oh, okay, And then he said, and guess what? The next Friday, we had like another gay. And before I knew it, we had a table of gays. And they all sat in that corner on the Friday. And we're like, wow, the food must have been good. And it's like, yeah. And then, before you knew it, it just kind of started becoming like a gay Friday thing, like in my restaurant. And we're like, oh my God, that's really great. And he's like, I really enjoyed it and I really welcomed it. And so it ended up being like a really nice conversation. But the real meat of this whole story is that during Gay Ocho that year, he came out with like 30 sandwiches for all of our volunteers. So that's kind of like the beauty in not judging, just kind of put the pause button, understand that they're where they're at, try to meet them where they're at, and build that little bridge, because that bridge is the beauty of community. And I really believe that the intentions are like almost always great intentions. And there's nothing that hurts me more than to see people cut at each other over a misunderstanding, just coming from slightly different places. So in terms of history, I mean, there's a lot more that I could go into, but I will touch one more thing, and that's the trans rights issues, which are so important and so pervasive right now, because what's happening with trans to me is exactly what was done to gay men in the 70s. And they're taking a very marginalized group of people, already marginalized group of people. They're putting the little shrimp on the hook, right? Especially the Republicans. Whoever devised this strategy is brilliant. But this is an old playbook, folks. This is an old playbook. This is the same playbook as in 1970. And they're doing it the same way. They're like, oh, we're going to take this, we're going to put it on the hook, and then we know how they're going to react. They're going to go nuts. And they're going to do and they're going to do drag queen balls and this, and this. And then we're going to have great footage, and we're going to be able to, right? It's all meant to divide. It's all meant to mischaracterize trans people at the baseline. That is exactly what this is meant to do. And we have to be smarter. We have to learn from our lessons in the past, from the 70s, and understand that we need education, coalition building. It can't just be this political fight, because politics won't win it. And if we sacrifice trans people, and we know that the polling is not favorable on trans issues, people don't understand it. They just don't know enough trans people, or even, what hormone blockers do, or what are the ages people start, or how many real medical transitions occur in kids under 18, which is minuscule. I mean, these things are just being brought out to attack us in a very, very Machiavellian and smart way. And I just feel like we need to be just as smart and just as Machiavellian and manipulative to understand that if we fall for these kind of, I call them traps for us. But if we fall for these traps, we're giving them what they want, because they want to be able to take this to the popular, to the polling people. And they want to be able to use this to really win elections as kind of like a fringe issue. Anyway, I think I said a lot.
Yes, thank you so much for that historical overview. It was amazing. I definitely learned a lot. So just kind of as continuing what you were talking about, we talked about the history. Now, can we talk a little bit about kind of what's going on today, specifically in like Miami, South Florida, kind of just what's going on? Because I know a lot of us, including me, aren't super sure about everything happening.
So in Florida, regrettably, we have a governor that is the person who has most capitalized on this issue, probably because he realizes that it will draw away Trump's base. Like the really far radical people will respond very well to his messaging. And so I think it's always been about a national agenda and being the presidential nominee for him at the expense of groups like ours. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean, this is kind of, I'm glad you asked this question because this is very important. For LGBTQ folks, you know, especially young folks, we're already there in many ways. We have all the protections from discrimination. We have marriage. That's not going away. I really believe it's not. We may have to fight it. We may have to, but we have secured those advances. It doesn't mean that if you're in Miami and you're going out, now it's become hostile. Or no, it doesn't mean that. You should feel safe and okay. But there is this threat out there. And unfortunately, when these kind of messages go out there, people become more violent. People become more prone to hate crimes, and not just LGBTQ, against Jews, against Black people, against nationalities. I mean, we find that just hate crimes go up in general. In places like South Beach, Wilton Manors, many places in South Florida and Key West, LGBTQ people are in government. They're celebrated. That's another thing. Obviously, I'm running for candidate in City of Miami Commission, but part of my discovery there is City of Miami is a very conservative city. And what happens in some cities, and I'm going to use City of Miami as an example, is pink washing. And what do I mean by that? Like, we had the mayor wear a rainbow sash and come out and give a message for Pride Month, which I thought was amazing. I was super happy. But then guess what? I'm on the LGBTQ advisory board. When there was any serious topic where we needed to engage with a commissioner, no one would meet with us or address us. Nothing that we wanted to accomplish was ever able to be accomplished. So especially you guys that are young and really starting out, it's important to understand, for most of my activist career, I could never have been an elected official because a gay person would not have been elected, period. Within the last, I want to say, decade, LGBTQ people are getting elected, and we're actually managing to obtain positions of power. It's important to understand, as much as you may do in the civic side, and I have 35 years of doing that, and I love it, by the way. If it were up to me, that's all I would do. I would never run for office. I never wanted to run for office. When I ran, people were like, "You're crazy. Why would you be doing this?" Because my city is not working for me or for us. And it's obvious. They will not. On Gay Ocho, we got $0 last year. No commissioner met with us. I won't tell you that it's an LGBTQ thing because it happens to Circle of Brotherhood. It happens to We Are Wynwood. We have just gotten to a point where the city is not responding to residents. And so I guess I just got so fed up, upset, and I was spending resources, time, everything, trying to do things on the civic side that I said, you know what? I might as well just run, because no one will ever represent us like an LGBTQ person. It just won't happen. You can have 1 million allies in the world, but they will never represent LGBTQ people the way an LGBTQ person will. So it's important for us, especially younger folks, to understand that running for office and obtaining positions of power, civic power, are important. And they're hard and they're difficult, and you're putting yourself out there, and people will attack you, and you're going to be misperceived and mischaracterized. And it's a horrible process. When people first asked me, why did you want to run? I'm like, I didn't want to run. Who would ever want to? If you're in your right mind, why would you ever want to run? Nobody wants. I mean, well, maybe there are some people who want to do it because of money or power. But if you're trying to really just do good things and you care about making a difference, it is very, very difficult to take that on and feel like really, oh, yay. Every time someone would say, oh, congratulations, in my mind, I'd be like, okay, yeah, congratulations and condolences, because I know this is a very tough haul. But on the other side of that is, if you're competent, qualified, work hard, and get that position, then you can really make an enormous difference, not just for LGBTQ people. Remember, going back to safeguarding American values for everyone, you make a huge difference for everyone. Because all of a sudden, those folks who are on that dais and have power have a need to understand the LGBTQ community and you as an LGBTQ person. So it changes the dynamic. And I would argue that someone from the LGBTQ community, which is so intersectional with so many other parts of the community, is probably the best positioned type of person to be in that seat in a diverse community like Miami and Miami-Dade County. Long answer.
Thank you so much. So the last of our prepared questions is very, very broad. So feel free to take it in any direction you want to. And I know you touched a little bit on it, but what would you say are some strategies for us to kind of create change just overall? Because I know a lot of students like me, you know, we are very passionate and we have this, you know, passion for activism, but we don't really know how to actually engage in bigger activism beyond like our campus or our smaller groups. So
Great question. I would say volunteer. I feel like people have lost the value of volunteering. Volunteering isn't like you're just doing something for someone. That's really not what happens at all. Volunteering is an opportunity to kind of cut your teeth and learn without having a job at risk. You know, you're actually doing things, interacting with people, making connections, making contacts. Lots of people find their spouse while volunteering. Listening, volunteering and listening, because do something that you're passionate about. Maybe it's LGBTQ and something else. But when you volunteer and you start listening to people, you also start learning how to create a bridge, either with that organization or with that person. And all the passion that you have for LGBTQ issues can be shared in those other settings as well. It's not like we have to go volunteer at an LGBTQ thing to be, you know, to have those LGBTQ conversations. I'm an activist against communism, meaning the kind of communism you find in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Ukraine. But I also understand that that's a very charged topic because it's become political through the prism of politics. So some folks like laugh at it. Oh, that's ridiculous. You know, other folks don't understand. But I only understand it because of my family and friends and people on the island and contacts that I still have. The reason I say this is because I'm interested in that and I work on that in addition to LGBTQ stuff. I have all kinds of bridges and I've learned all kinds of things about other communities that have really helped me understand better my own and ways to help my own integrate with these other ones. Because at the end, that's what we want to do. We want to be able to be understood, be seen, be visible, be respected. In order to do that, we also have to see people, respect them, and you know, and so there's a meeting line somewhere, right? And when you volunteer, it's the exploration of where is that line, you know, how, you know, so you end up learning a lot of skills, people skills, communication skills. So that's what I would say. I would recommend volunteer and don't be shy about doing it outside of a strictly LGBTQ cause.
for sure. Thank you so much. All right, so that was the last of the kind of prepared questions because I did want to leave a lot of time for Q&A. So if anybody does have questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat, unmute your mic, any of those things. If you drop them in the chat, I'll read them out loud for you. So if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask. I can kind of start us off because I actually have a question. Just as a person, not as a staff member of the LGBT Center. So kind of when did you first become civically engaged? Because for me, I feel like there's this weird dynamic about being either too young or getting into it too late or that kind of thing. So that's definitely something I wanted to hear from you about.
Yeah, I think any age is great. I don't think there's any kind of rule to that. I personally was civically engaged very young. I mean, I was a Boy Scout, right? And then from there, when I went to college, I went to Georgetown University School of Foreign Service, and my fraternity was a service fraternity. So we would do soup kitchens on the weekends. I would do an inner city tutorial program. I would drive our bus with the folks to inner city schools where we would tutor kids. So I think it was just kind of, even my high school was Belen Jesuit, which their motto is, meant for others. It's an all boys school, but it's all about service. And the Jesuits have always held that as a longstanding kind of tradition. So I think it just kind of built, in my case. But I will say this, I was a really bad activist. Meaning, like, what I mean by bad activist is, like, occasionally I'd forget my key. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, things you do when your heart is in the right place, but you're not mature enough to handle all the responsibilities that are thrown at you. So I think it's important to still do it. I think it's important to be very kind and forgiving to yourself and understand that you tried to do something. Maybe you didn't do it exactly the way you wanted it or the way it was intended to come out, but be good to yourself, because that's okay. That's just having the right intention and putting yourself out there is 90%. And you will get better over time. You'll realize the consequences and the meanings of things, and just don't always do it, because you're going to learn so much. My success in the private sector has been largely built upon my nonprofit experiences, which, it has made me a fantastic manager in the private sector, having done the kinds of things I did. So I realized that it was a beautiful training ground for me, but I only realized that probably at this point of my life. When I was going through it, I wasn't really that aware. So I love to be able to share that with you guys.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I'm going to jump in, Ryan, for a second. First of all, apologies to Aniette for impersonating her on Zoom. I'm not really sure why my screen has her name on it, but my name is actually Meredith Camel. And Damian, it's great to have you here. I have been working actually with Aniette lately to resurrect the University of Miami LGBTQ faculty and staff network. And we've got some really small group of dedicated people who are trying to make that happen. It's been tough ever since COVID. But one of the recent conversations we had was, how can we as a faculty and staff network support the community? And, you talk about volunteerism, and certainly we're all very busy and we have full-time jobs. But if there's ways that we can connect with each other and support what you do, or if you have ideas on that, I'd certainly love to hear them.
Well, I mean, everyone is welcome to give me a call. Obviously, I'm involved in a lot of things, and I'm actually running a campaign in the city. So if anybody ever wants to, I'll tell you the beauty of getting involved. And this isn't specifically my campaign, it's any political campaign. I love, even to this day, what I love the most about running is knocking on doors and talking to people. Knocking on doors and talking to people. Why? Because the media tells us a reality. This is the reality of what people think or what's happening in this city. Then there's reality, which is not necessarily what people think it is. And I'll use one quick example. The West Grove, which was called the Black Grove when I was growing up, or just the Grove. I grew up in Coconut Grove. The West Grove, or the Black Grove, sometimes also called Little Bahamas now, is where my school was. My school was St. Hugh's School on the other side of the graveyard. And I used to sleep over. I had a very close friend in the West Grove. He used to sleep over with me. And it was an area that I considered my own as well. It's a part of where I grew up. Well, I had heard over these years, gentrification is happening in the West Grove. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's happening in Little Havana too. It happens in a lot of places. No, what's happening in the West Grove is horrible. It's predatory. People are being pushed out. Why do I know? Because I've knocked on doors. And now I have met, I'm going to say maybe 100, 120 people or so, homes of people that are living there. And it's the same exact story time and time and time and time again. I've even called friends of mine and said, hey, You're a documentarian. Would you be willing to do a film? Like, we need to try to get the word out about what's happening here, because this hurts us all. And I personally am convinced that if most people knew what was happening in that area, they would stand up. They would do GoFundMe accounts. Like, people, I mean, there's nothing good about a 90-year-old single mom staying in her home, receiving harassment calls all day, night, having code inspectors put fines so that they can accrue interest to stress them out. So in the later part of life, they get rid of their $700,000 home once it has $100,000 in fees on it, and they get pushed to live where? In Miami at 90, right? And we see generations of kids coming into the Grove to take care of their grandparents and to take. There is a huge difference. It is not like me. If I get displaced, I can go anywhere. People in the West Grove, particularly the Bahamian families, settled Miami. They are the ones who settled Miami. They built Vizcaya. They built large parts of Coral Gables, Merrick, all of George Merrick's properties. I mean, this is a community that has tremendous pride from where they came from, and they are rooted there. It is a cultural value, familial value, deep value. And to see folks like that being pushed out, literally, by the economics of the area, because now it has great value. Climate gentrification has really impacted that area of the Grove. So, and why is that important? Again, kind of hitting on what I was talking about, LGBTQ. Me fighting for and understanding that story and being a champion of it opens so many doors for LGBTQ. Just like the same thing on Cuba. The fact that people see, here's this person who authentically gets it and is fighting our fight. Let's understand more about his fight. Let's understand more about his community. Let's understand. So all of a sudden now there's a back and forth. There's a, to me, that's called community building. And it's really easy, because I think most of us, when we see an injustice like that, we want to call it out. So what can faculty do is kind of rally behind things like that. And if people want to ever volunteer just to go out and meet folks at the door and talk with them, you're going to come away with a very different perception of what are the problems, here in Miami or South Florida.
Thank you so much.
Answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, getting out and knocking on doors is something that probably not many of us think about doing. When you're running for office, that sounds, like a natural progression of the process. But I certainly appreciate your invitation for us to contact you. And, again, just kind of trying to get our feelers out there and wrap our heads around, where can we be of service to particularly to LGBTQ groups.
Well, especially SAVE. SAVE had done a lot of, SAVE and Save Dade had done a lot of prejudice reduction training, and a lot of and I did this for years as well. And I enjoyed this equally. You can go and knock on people's doors, and really what you're trying to do is reduce the prejudice against trans people, against, all the LGBTQ community. And it's very effective. SAVE was actually one of the pioneering organizations. FIU did a big study on that. And it was released at the national level that kind of prejudice reduction canvassing really does work. It really does start shifting opinions. So that's actually even a better one, because it kind of hits the issue more perfectly. But that's something I would encourage as well, getting in touch with SAVE and getting in touch with other groups. I don't know if Pride Lines is doing any kind of work like that, but I do know that SAVE mastered that for a long time. And I imagine that they're still doing that kind of work.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We have a couple questions in the chat. So the first one says, many of our students today are scared to be activists. Can you relate to this fear, and what advice would you have for our students?
Oh, yes. I can relate to this fear. In my day, we used to get eggs thrown at us, the threat of being beat up. We were called queer all the time, beat up to the word queer, which is why sometimes older populations don't accept that word easily, because it has a little bit of a trauma associated with it. What I would say is that yes, absolutely, you should be worried. I don't know, the scared part, it isn't what it was back then, and I'm not trying to soften it, but what I'm trying to say is sometimes within our media sources, we're made to feel that people hate us. Like, people hate us, and when we walk outside, someone might throw a bottle at our head, but really that's also the polarized world we live in. We live in kind of this media polarized world where these ideas are heightened. And I don't think, I'm not afraid to go outside anywhere in Miami. And I don't think that people are going to all of a sudden want to beat me up because I'm gay. The opposite. I have found people are more open than ever. Unfortunately, there's this whole national ugly. And I think that's where this fear is coming from. We hear what people are putting out there at a national level, and we're like, oh my God, this is like hateful stuff. And we're the targets of it. So while I understand that feeling, when you look at the reality of the situation, we're not, nobody here has been beat up like that. Like, it is, we're not seeing any kind of incidents in crime or any of those kinds of crimes at any local level to think that way. What I'm trying to say is, for mental health reasons, if you're afraid to be an activist, you need to work through that. You need to consider that. It's real. But I think that's something you can work through, because in the real life circumstances, it can also be a very empowering, uplifting thing if you're out there doing this work and you realize it's not as bad as you thought. You're like, wow, I'm not experiencing these things. So I'd encourage you to keep going. Don't let that stop you. Try to work through it and see how far you can get.
Thank you so much. All right. The next one says, good afternoon. Currently, there is an active travel advisory for Florida from the NAACP, as well as from Equality Florida and the Human Rights Campaign. I have spoken with many LGBTQ plus students and young people who have changed their plans from staying in Miami or Florida post-graduation because of recent legislation. Is there any advice you would give to students that have these concerns?
Wow. I mean, the concerns are real. Just like, they've sent out, not boycotts, but advisories on travel and things like that. But I think you also have to realize that fits a prism of political polarization. Groups align with their political interests in their parties. And so it is important to highlight why these policies may lead down a very ugly road. And that's what they're doing. Now, are we at that ugly road right now? No, we're not. Hopefully, we will prevent getting to that ugly road, which is what a lot of us are working on. But for my friends, if they were calling me and they said, look, I have concerns about living in Miami, I would say, don't. I don't think you should be concerned about living in Miami. Should you be concerned about these policies and the hateful nature and language? Yes, you should. And we should fight them, but I don't want people to think, because this is also a mental health issue. If people start thinking that, oh my God, we're hated and this, that's in the real world, meaning you go to your job, you go to eat, you go to a movie, you go to whatever it is. I have not encountered any change in our climate like that. I hope I don't. My goal is that we never go to something like that again. Also, I might be a little bit desensitized to this. Recognize that I grew up in an era where I had bottles thrown, eggs thrown, so maybe my standard is a little bit harsher than someone who has never experienced any of this and is now hearing words that really raise up the caution flag. So at the end of the day, it's what people feel comfortable. If a student does not feel comfortable because of these things, then they should act with the way that they feel. But my only comment here is to challenge yourself a little bit and test things. Put yourself in situations where it's not just what you saw online or what someone said or what an advisory read, but actual real world experience as to what are you feeling when you go on the street, when you go shopping, when you meet people at a bar, when you, do those things match up is what I'm getting at. Because sometimes the world we see in social media and in media and in news is really a little bit not detached, but it's skewed from what you might live on a day-to-day basis. Good question.
I guess I kind of have a follow-up question. So I definitely hear you on that. And I would agree the climate is definitely not nearly as bad as the media portrays. But I do know me and a lot of my other trans friends have gotten concerned specifically about the HRT bans and all of those things. And kind of what advice would you give in terms of, navigating that as like a trans person in Florida, or, a BIPOC person watching history essentially get warped by her governor? Just aside from the climate, more on the legislative side, kind of what we can do on that.
Yeah, well, on everything you brought up with the trans community, if it is anything even remotely affecting my healthcare, I wouldn't live in that state. Period. Hands down. If it's something like you're a BIPOC person and you're seeing what's happening with African American history, that's appalling. But this is one governor, one point in time, who has a very specific agenda, and this too shall pass. So should you go live in a state where you're paying taxes? I don't know. It becomes more complicated. You kind of have to weigh that out. I think and I hope that this is transitory. And even though we do have a Republican legislature, it's the governor who sets the tone. Because the way parties work, you're never allowed to buck the party. The party is monolithic. You have to do what the party tells you to do. And those folks in the legislature, I assure you, do not agree with a big part of what this governor is putting forward. But they have to do it because that's his national agenda to become presidential nominee. So give it some time is what I would say on issues like that. If it's an issue that directly impacts your healthcare, absolutely do not stay here.
For sure. Thank you so much for that clarification. We have another question in the chat. It says, can you comment on the impact that the Death Star legislation will have on activism and the ability for local governments to enact laws that reflect their constituents' desires?
Can you take me back a minute on the Death Star legislation and making sure that I understand that the way that
So I asked the question. You want me to speak up, Ryan?
Yes, please, because I am not educated on that.
No worries. Hi, this is Aniette Laredo. Good to meet you, Damian. I really appreciate you being here and spending some time sharing your insights and experience. So Death Star legislation is something that's been making the rounds in Florida. It is similar to a legislation that was passed by the state of Texas earlier. And there's different nuances to it, but the effect is that if a local city, government, municipality passes a law based on the needs and obviously the input of its constituents, that in somehow is perceived to be harsher, different than what the state has, or then perhaps a business is comfortable with, there's always, they can indeed, the business can sue the city in a court of law. Hey, that's not a huge difference from what we have today, right? The law is the court system is fantastic. It's designed to make the process more equitable. The nuances to it are such that once a law, let's say it's in existence, goes through the court system and being countered by a business, that law is put on pause. And businesses can do whatever it is they'd like to do while it's being litigated. If the city loses, the city obviously has to pay all costs for going into litigation. as the losing party. However, as the business loses, the business does not have to pay the cost of the city. The taxpayers will continue to have to pick up that cost. What's happening is that the fear or the undertone is that at the end of the day, and I think this is a quote that I saw on a newscast a while ago, a member of the Democratic legislative team asked, well, what happens if on the local level, the citizens voted something in and a business decides they don't want it? Does that mean that the business's perception or view is more important and therefore supersedes the vote or the will of the people? And the answer by the Republican that they quoted was yes, the will of the business supersedes the will of the people. So that's just super high level. I mean, there's a lot of information available for you to dive a little deeper, but I think that's really important because foundationally, who matters more, the business or the will of the people?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. You said it was making its rounds through the legislature. Has it just always been in that way? Has it gotten out of committee type of thing?
You know, I don't have all the details more recently. I can do a quick lookup, but I think if you just do a standard, actually, we all should be doing that, a standard Google search on the Death Star legislation. You can put Florida, and then you'll see that a lot of information will pop up regarding Texas because they passed it a while ago. Yeah. But it was actually supposedly being signed. It may have been signed, but it's supposedly being signed by the governor.
Well, obviously, it's horrible. I think that would be horrible legislation. I think it would be very much in line with what this governor has been doing. Like I said, I think my hope is that this is just this one governor, and that the next leader that comes in definitely doesn't continue down this track. I think there's been a lot of pushback on a lot of these policies, and I don't think it's really working for Republicans in Florida. I think that that we'll see a change with that. I just hope it doesn't continue down this road. That would be horrible public policy, by the way.
All right, thank you.
All righty, so we're about at time. I do want to give Damian the chance to kind of say anything you might have left to share with everyone. Some closing remarks if you have any.
Well, no, actually, I don't have any closing remarks. I just want to thank all of you for your time and for allowing me this pleasure. It really is for me a pleasure to talk about all this stuff. So if you ever want to connect, please keep my information. I'm always happy to chat, to have a good conversation, and to explore. I think the willingness to explore and to be open and to consider, especially when you all are living in a place like Miami, is just phenomenal. Because you can go from one block to another block and get a completely different experience in the community. So I hope you will do that. I hope you will use your location where you're at and try to learn about a lot of these different little communities that are probably just blocks away from you when you're on campus. And I'm here, and don't be shy about reaching out. I would love it.
Thank you so much, Damian. Okay, I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. V.
Thank you, Damian. Thank you, Ryan. This was amazing. I want to remind the group that's here, we do have a YouTube channel where we've been putting some really phenomenal workshops we've been doing over the summer that impact our LGBTQ students. So if you have an opportunity, please check us out. Taylor, who's one of our other assistants, led a fabulous session with our U Health Director, Dr. Emilio Vols, on care for our LGBTQ students here at the university. We are continuing to do these. We look for ideas. Mariana is our program guru here in the center. So if you have ideas of things that you might like to see, please reach out to her. And again, thank you, Ryan. I think there's something with evaluation coming up, right?
Yes. Alrighty, so we do have a program eval. I do have all of you guys' emails because to join you had to register, so I will be sending out an evaluation. If you could fill it out, that would be absolutely amazing. In the meantime, thank you all so much for joining. I will be sending out that eval in the next 5-10 minutes. thank you so much, Damian, for all of the great information and for being our special guest.
Thank
and
you.
I hope we
Thank
all...
you, Dr. V.
Yes, of course. All right, have a good one, everyone, and keep an eye out for that evaluation. Go Canes!
Go Canes!